Today on Locked On Canadiens, defensemen, and meet our new co-host.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1121. We thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every day. As you know, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day, and we're free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and today I am joined for the first time by my new co-host, Ian Boisvert of The Build. You know him from The Build. Ian, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you're joining me.
Laura, I'm buzzing. I'm so excited. I've kind of just floated through the day thinking about doing this show. I'm really excited to get started, and we have news, which is not, usual for late July. So things are going well.
I was going to say, I think Kent Hughes likes you more than he likes Scott, because what Kent Hughes likes to do is wait for Scott to make predictions or have some analysis on the show, and then go ahead and then, do a signing or announce some news at like 7:30 in the morning that literally makes the show obsolete. Whereas Kent waited for you and did a bunch of signings. So I guess the most significant one, the most impactful one, is the Kaiden Guhle deal, and it is for 6 years, $5.5 million per, $33 million overall. 33 point, no, 3. It's 33.
Yep.
I can do math. I promise you, I can do math. And I think this kind of sets a tone, because for those of us who really were impressed with Kaiden Guhle, I think this kind of validates that the team feels the same way about him. But at the same time, for those of us who wanted more, if you look at the dollar amount, it's clear that this is not a true number one defenseman kind of contract. This is someone where they haven't closed the door on that, but if he's ever going to be that, he's going to have to really show it. Like this shows me that he's a component of this blue line. It's someone they love, but he's not the guy.
Yeah, and he's right. He's paid adequately for that. I think it's the term here is really what stood out to me more so than the dollar amount, because usually with these young defensemen, young players in general, we're seeing them sign max contracts, right? Like we're seeing them get 8, we're seeing them get 7. For them to go 6 here, I find that kind of interesting. If I were Kaiden Guhle, I would kind of like it, because it means towards the back end of my prime, I can cash in again when the cap is much higher, right? Like we're only just starting to see the salary cap go up after the pandemic. Like we're going to start seeing that explode over the next few years, because hockey, the escrow is paid off by the players. So we're going to see that salary cap start to rise again. To think that like Kaiden Guhle could potentially be a top pairing defenseman in this contract while he's making $5.5 million, like that's tidy work from Kent Hughes. Like that's just very, very impressive work. And even if he is a second pairing defenseman at that cap hit, we're still laughing, because like I said, the cap is going to go up. That $5.5 million, the percentage it takes up of the cap, is only going to decrease over the lifespan of this contract. So really tidy work. The part that I think is most interesting to me, taking into effect the entire cap structure of the Canadiens right now, is everybody, almost all of the bigger contracts that we would need to start at the end of this upcoming season are taken care of, right? Like we have a lot of that money tied up. Jeff Gorton has already said that's going to be a very important summer for us. So to me, that shows that they want to know exactly how much money they're going to have to play with before it's time to spend. And this signing of Kaiden Guhle and the two that we'll talk about later on, it solidifies that for them, right? Like they're going to know next summer before they hit July 1st how much money they're going to have to spend. And that's That's just them setting themselves up for success. And, while also keeping this really, really good hockey player. Like it's an easy win for Kent Hughes and the front office of the Canadiens.
And from my perspective, I think it's really interesting because a lot of the times we use the word bold to describe this ownership group, but they're also prudent when it counts. Like these are value contracts, right? We talk about like the trades that they end up not making. We talk about how, a lot of times they know what they want and they're going to fixate on that and they're going to go for that. And if they don't get that specific thing, it's like they're not really going to bother, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's really interesting from a team that does have that ability to kind of just do the thing when it's required to do, like to have that restraint with money is so important and so interesting. And I like that you said that, their vision is next year. They're going to have that money to spend and they're going to need to spend that money. And then from Kaiden Guhle's side, honestly, like I look at this and I think that he does still have that opportunity. Like he's got security for sure. He's got that security. But if you look at that end of that 6 years, like how much are second pairing defensemen going to be making? He could be a steal. If he's still playing on the first pairing, he could be a steal. And it's going to be incredible. And I like how this kind of balances it out as well. Because what if they want Reinbacher playing up with Lane Hudson and that's the pairing that you're going to throw out first, right? So this kind of sets a tone for Reinbacher for what to aim for, also what to surpass. But when it is time for him to sign that deal, they will know what he is and they will know where these two defensemen are going to fall in the pecking order. And I think that's so important. Like there's so much foresight associated with this contract that I think it's just so, like, it just makes me feel confident in this management group. Like there's something about the way this summer has gone. And I know Demidov has an outsized influence on that. There's something about this summer that makes me feel more and more that these people, they really know what they're doing, right? They really know what they're trying to achieve and they know how they think they're going to achieve it. And they're going to stick to that no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a post on Reddit today that I'll read from. The Canadiens have, if you want to call it their core, it's their core of current NHL players. Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Juraj Slafkovsky, Kaiden Guhle are all locked up to long-term contracts, and they make less than $30 million combined.
Which is incredible.
It's
if you
unbelievable work by that front office. Like I can't. Did you even know they were negotiating with Kaiden Guhle? I had no idea this was even on the table.
Not at all. I didn't expect this at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about how quiet he'd been. We're like, are you in the cottage? Like, what's going on, right?
Yeah, there's the memes about him not setting his alarm. He's still sleeping. I think that that's kind of where Kent Hughes' experience as an agent really pays off. He knows what these players want out of these negotiations, right? None of these have been nasty yet, how do I make this about the Leafs? I'm going to watch. The way that they negotiated contracts with just about every part of their core was nasty. It went poorly. The players, the players just took Kyle Dubas and shook him until the money stopped falling out. We're not seeing that here. We're seeing these guys. I mean, are they leaving money on the table? Maybe, but they're getting market value for what they are now. And you're cashing in on that as a team and saying, we think they're going to surpass that value in the future. So why not just pay them that now? You need to, you talked about being bold. You need to be a little bold in that respect, right? You have to say, we're taking a risk here. It's an educated risk, right? Like they know the player. He's played over 100 games. But it is a risk in the sense that maybe he doesn't become that big, number one defenseman. But like we said, at this cap hit, he doesn't have to. So the way that they've negotiated all of these deals, I remember we were begging for the Caulfield one for what felt like months. That was the only one that really seemed to drag on, but it never got nasty. Like they took their time. So it really seems like they took their time here and it paid off.
And I think that's the biggest thing is that keeping these players happy, because why are they leaving money on the table? Because they want to stay here. Why do they want to stay here? One, because they think that there's a possibility of winning in the future. And two, because this is an organization they trust, they feel comfortable with. For those who have families, like, they feel like they're in good hands, right? So there's a lot at play here. But if you are, and for people who argue about like the taxes in Quebec being so high and et cetera, if you're a destination franchise, people will ignore that, or they'll work around that. They'll say, okay, can you give me this kind of bonus, or that this kind of structure in the way that you pay me that enables me to have favorable tax outcomes, things like that, where like what you have to concentrate on is not paying the most money, or you have to concentrate on trying to be a place where players and elite players want to play, not just the players nobody else wants. And in our next segment, we're going to talk about other players that we want. Arber Xhekaj. I was so excited when I saw that they had taken care of business on that front, and how the future of the Habs blue line is starting to take shape. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. How often are you trying to find tickets? Let's say you're in town, you want to watch a baseball game, MLB tickets. Like, honestly, it's the most fun thing to do in the summer, and you're looking for tickets, and it's just so annoying and so hard because you can't find the seat you want. You can't find the event you want. You also have all these hidden fees, or you're finding tickets and you don't know if the seats are going to have that obstructed view. I love you, Fenway, but oh my God. And in the meantime, Game Time is here to solve all of your problems. It is the easiest way to find tickets. If you want last-minute tickets, they have last-minute deals. They have zone deals. They have all-in pricing, so you're never paying any hidden fees. And it's just so easy. They have a lowest price guarantee. You can also see the view from your seat before you buy. It's just so easy. And honestly, the last-minute tickets, you can save 60%. It is an absolute no-brainer. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. And we're back in our second segment. Oh my God, this is the first time I've ever said we're back. It's like Scott is gone and like his ghost is still here. In our second segment, we want to talk a little bit about the deals that took place. We didn't have an episode yesterday. We are down to our summer schedule, by the way, 3 episodes a week, all the way up until, I believe, training camp. We'll have 3 episodes a week. And we want to talk about the deals for Arber Xhekaj and Justin Barron and what they kind of imply for the blue line of this team in the future. So I think for me, the thing that I was not worried about at all was that they were going to pay Arber Xhekaj what he was worth, but it wasn't going to be an overpay. And he was going to stay with the team longer term. I actually thought, honestly, that he would get a little bit more based on the potential that he has. Like, we know he has potential to be more on this team. He does have that skill there. So, Ian, what are your thoughts? Like, when you first heard about the contract or the terms of the contract, what were your thoughts?
It seems like this contract doesn't really reflect the market for the player, in my opinion. And I could be off base here, but all we hear is, how coveted he is across the league, right? That he's a player that other teams would love to get their hands on. They just got him, and it's a bridge deal. Like, it wasn't meant to be that big of a contract. And with the Canadiens back, the blue line as crowded as it is, it's probably a smart play for Montreal to, hey, let's just give him 2 years, see where the dust settles back here, and then if we want to, we can commit to him. The double-edged sword with that being kind of like what we just talked about with Kaiden Guhle, but the inverse. Let's say he does become that true terrifying defensive player who, maybe at the end of those 2 years, maybe they've won a playoff round with him being an absolute menace. Like, that becomes an issue for the Canadiens down the line. But with that said, like, he's a fan favorite guy. Everyone loves this guy. I love this guy. don't show me a chart with red on it. I don't care. Like he's not not every player has to have a blue chart. Like this is a game played by humans. It's, the human element matters here. And that goes both ways. Players hate playing against him, and everybody in that locker room loves this guy. So I just I don't know. He's just a really good guy to have around. If I was him, I'd be like, all you could get me was 1.3. Like I should be making more than that. Like I was kind of expecting maybe 3. But it's a great deal for the Canadiens, obviously, but we'll see how it plays out over the next 2 years.
I think part of the reason why he's so coveted that you mentioned is because probably a lot of GMs saw that like his next contract was probably going to be this. Like you're getting great value for money with this contract, in my opinion. It's 2 years. And like you said, like if he doesn't fit anymore, you trade him away or something, at the deadline, you get something for him. Hopefully it doesn't turn acrimonious at that time. But for me, like personally, I think this is the reason why he's so coveted, is that he still hasn't attained that potential that we know he has. He definitely has a lot of attributes where he has attained that, like his physicality, etc. His value to this team is not diminished by the fact that his contract is only $1.3 million. I think it's just that he's able to provide more. And the Canadiens with this deal are saying, okay, let's see the other side of your game. Like the side that we know is there. We just want to see it exhibited on the ice, right? That's more my feeling about this, because I think it's absolutely true that other teams covet him because he is that type of player that everyone hates playing against. I think he's also like, he brings seats. He puts butts in seats, right? He's definitely somebody that attracts fans and has a fan following. And if you look at like the marketing the Canadiens do and a lot of the charity stuff they do, like he's involved in it. He's got a great personality, right? Like he's loved in this fan base. So I think they're getting a lot of value for the player. I also don't think it's an overpay, which is interesting. But I also, I didn't think it was more going to be more towards 3. Like in my mind, when we were talking about it, it was going to be more like a 2.2 kind of thing. So this really is a steal, but I think it also sends a message. And then on the flip side, we have Justin Barron, which is 2 years as well, but it was 1.15. Like, so for this one, for me, made a lot more sense because there is going to be a logjam at that blue line. Absolutely. And as Ian, this morning, as we discussed it, I often forget Justin Barron is a thing.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate for a player like this, because I think he's one of the ones where he has to fight to solidify his position on this team. And I have not necessarily seen long-term when I've watched him play thus far.
Yeah, with him, it's the flashes, right? You see little bits and pieces. There was that stretch I can't remember when it was this season, but where I think he had goals in back-to-back games. He was moving, like you noticed him out there. And then there are other games, like I got to a Laval Rocket game in Hartford this year that he played in, and it was not good. The puck is a grenade on his stick sometimes. Like it's something that I am legitimately concerned about with this player, that I fear his decision making at times is flawed, and not so much where he'll make the safe play and just Douglas Murray punch it off the glass, but in the sense that like a lot of time he's putting the puck right onto other guys' sticks. Like it's legitimately concerning to me. I like you said, the flashes are there, the promise, I see it, I get it. He has to put it together at some point, right? And I know it's crazy to say that because I think, what is he, like 22? Like it's not like he's not running out of time, right? It's just the situation he finds himself in Montreal on a blue line that the Canadiens front office has really focused on. They like that. I don't want to say the blue line is set, because it's not set until we have a full roster of guys that we know are going to be NHLers, and we don't know that yet. But it's a musical chairs game, right? And I really worry that by the end of this, he's not going to have a chair. I hope that, this season is a big step forward for him. I hope he makes that contract look really silly, and his next deal coming out of the bridge is really nice and sets him up for a long time. But lots of question marks with this player. Like it's to me anyway. I know that there are some who really like this guy, and I like him too. It's just those areas of concern are still concerning, and we haven't seen a ton of growth from him, whether that be at the AHL level or the NHL level.
I think that's it. It's like it's not a steady upward climb, right? It's like he's going in a straight line. The straight line is going nowhere, and then
Right.
occasionally he detours to doing well, right?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And so that's for me, it's like it's we want consistent upward movement. And that's the key, is that if they're constantly improving, like yes, they'll have bad games here and there. But I think, to me, the biggest thing with Justin Barron is that I don't necessarily see him on this blue line in the long term. And that's something that he has to do something about before the front office starts seeing him that way again. Right.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, obviously, we will continuously be talking about all these defensemen, because we've got Lane Hudson and David Breinbacher. I'm going to call them on deck at this point. I think they're that close, right?
Yep.
It's definitely going to be Laval. But they're on deck, right? And they're going to be joining this blue line at some point. Hopefully this season it'll be exciting if they do. If not, we won't be too disappointed. I know they're not going to be rushed, as the key thing is that the Canadiens are going to have patience with them. But we're going to leave that for, we're going to watch it play out on the ice, and we're going to be discussing it all the time, as you know. In the meantime, I do want to turn our attention, and I want everybody to get to know our new co-host, Ian, and that is coming up in literally just one moment. All right, Ian, are you ready to introduce yourself to the listeners? I'm just gonna do questions. How about that? I won't make you tell the story. I'll do questions. How about that?
Yeah, I'm an open book. You can ask me whatever. I can't just sit up here and talk about myself. I'll probably throw up. So you go ahead.
All right. So why don't we start with, how many years have you been a Habs fan?
2000, I guess it would be the 7-8 season. Does that sound right? No, probably the 6-7 season. I think it was the year that the Ducks went to the Cup final, and won. They won that year. So yeah, we're going on.
18-ish?
We're almost at 20 years. Yeah. So most of my life, those early years were pretty lean. There wasn't a ton going on. I remember one of my first memories that I have, and it's a little later than that start, was Cristobal Huet being out for getting injured in game one, and just getting so angry at David Abisher every night. Like, it was unhealthy for a middle schooler to be thinking like that, but that's where my head was.
And that answers the question as to how old or young Ian is on this show. Do you remember the Steve Béget? Like, you're never going to forget him, that memory. Yeah, that's pretty prominent in my mind from those days.
Yeah, fourth line guy. I think he was a really effective fourth liner. I loved Steve Béget in Montreal. Didn't he play in Boston too? That sucked. I think I remember that. Yeah, that was an ugly switch.
Yep, that was definitely what do you call it? A heel turn, as it were. I also like how you remembered a dude in the previous segment when we talked about Douglas Murray. I was like, oh, first episode, he remembers the dude. Great.
I'm gonna try to do that. Yeah, I almost just brought up Matthew Dandino for no reason. So here we are.
We're remembering dudes, and that's an Easter egg for the listeners. Every episode, listen out for Ian to remember a dude, unless it's a segment called "Remember Some Dudes." That's not part of the competition. But just email us, leave a comment in the YouTube when Ian remembers a dude, and maybe we'll make a drinking game out of it, but be healthy. Oh, and before I go on, don't forget that this Friday at 7:30, we will have a live show. It'll be Scott's Hot Ones. He's going to address his enemies. I will be there. Ian, will you be there? Would you like to be there?
Absolutely. I got to see this.
And we're going to watch Scott do his Hot Ones, and that's going to be his unofficial goodbye, which means we'll get a lot more, truths and gossip out of him. All right, back to our current show. So, who has been your favorite Habs throughout the time that you've been a Habs fan? So, maybe the favorite for the longest time, or the one that you still love the most?
Yeah. I think my first favorite was probably Alex Kovalev. He was the most electric player the Canadiens had when I first started watching. And depending on who you talk to, the most electric since then is still Alex Kovalev. I have I collect hockey jerseys. You'll probably see a good number of them throughout the season. Not only Canadiens jerseys, but across the spectrum of leagues and teams. But I have a Saku Koivu jersey. He was, I got to see him once in person, I think, at a game. So like, I didn't get a ton of him before he moved on. PK Subban is just obviously that was the first trade that took a little piece of me with it. Like that was hard. And I think it was hard because I still, well, Montreal got Shea Weber and they went to a Stanley Cup final. And yep. And the Nashville Predators got PK Subban and went to a Stanley Cup final. So that's a wash as far as I'm concerned. Like that the problem is that it was made for seemingly the wrong reasons. It was not a trade made to improve a hockey team. It was a trade made to rid the locker room of a personality they didn't want around anymore, which I cannot stand as a philosophy. I know I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but yeah, those are my dudes. I also have like my first jersey was an Alex Tanguay Canadiens jersey that one year he was in Montreal. I have an Alex Radulov Canadiens jersey that one year he was in Montreal. So like I bring up dudes, I love to just like I love these dudes jerseys that just don't matter at all.
A blip on the radar, as it were.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite team to hate?
It's one of Toronto or Ottawa. I think it's just because it's so easy to get them going, right? Like it's sort of always a powder keg when we're around each other. For those who aren't aware, I'm not Canadian. I live in the States. I'm in Connecticut. So I'm deeply entrenched in enemy territory of two teams that have broken my heart over the time I've been a Canadiens fan, and with the Rangers and the Bruins. Those fan bases I get along with. Like I don't really, I hate the Bruins, but like I don't really have that much of an animosity towards them. But yeah, it's something about like I don't know. Ottawa has Stanley Cup banners hanging in their building they didn't win. Like that's sort of the thing I like to. It bothers me, and it's an easy target, right? Like it's easy to just like point and laugh a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I don't really love being a guy who stirs up animosity on the internet, so I try to get along with just about everybody. But yeah, those are two fan bases where it's pretty easy to get fired up when we're playing them.
I think for me, it's like I hate the Bruins the most as a team, but I disdain the Ottawa Senators the most.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite player that is currently on the roster? Could be on the NHL roster or the AHL roster.
It's a good question. I honestly hadn't even thought about that. It's hard to go wrong with Nick Suzuki. Like he's just I love a Swiss Army knife of a player, and that's really what he's become. He can score, he can set guys up, but he's also playing well defensively. He outside of goaltender, I think center is one of the hardest jobs on the ice because he's got to cover so much ice on a given night.
And he does it well.
He does it so well, and it's also just really cool to see an Asian Canadian wear the C for the Montreal Canadiens. Like that's never happened before. Like that's really cool. So like he's an impossible guy to dislike as far as I'm concerned. So like he's probably at the top of the list for me.
What I like about him is that he's so wholesome. He's clearly a nice boy, right? With cats and like a fiance.
Yeah, he's a cat guy.
And like and his parents are adorable, and like they really embraced Montreal and how much we've embraced him. But on the ice, he's stone cold and ruthless.
Yeah.
Like the way he just sometimes he'll like score a goal, and like if he'll miss, he'll do it again until he gets it. And he's just like he's so low key. Like he's not in your face cruel, but he's so low key ruthless. I love that about him. That contrast. How long do you think it'll take before the Habs can win a Stanley Cup?
Well, if it's going to happen with this core, we're probably looking at maybe 5 or 6 years. Unless maybe they're a team like the Blues or the Capitals who didn't win a cup until they weren't supposed to. Like it was all those years where like, yeah, this is the team. And they kept running into the same enemies over and over again. And then finally just found a way to do it. I think we're a ways away. I think this season is going to be a step forward. I'm not going to say playoffs. They're going to try, obviously.
And they
but-
should.
And they should be healthy. They, knock on wood, should be healthier. Having Kirby Dach for a whole season is going to make this team better. I think a lot of outside, prognosticators don't remember that we lost our number 2 center in the second shift of the second game of the year. So yeah, I think the only way to go is up. That's why, like, one of the reasons I'm really excited to be starting the show now is like we're an upward trajectory. Like we're going to see some really cool stuff over the next few years. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And speaking of that, as we wrap up the show, tell the listeners what you want them to know about you and, what you're going to bring to the show and what our show is going to be about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think much is going to change from the way that you guys have listened to this show. I've got some new ideas that I want to try out. Laura and I are talking about stuff behind the scenes. But things are going to be the way things are. I don't want to come in and upset the apple cart, so to speak. I probably use more metaphors than I should. So fair warning. I'll probably quote music I like way too much. So fair warning there as well. But yeah, like I said, I try to get along with just about everybody. You'll see, I don't remember who it was in the comments who said that I needed to get rid of the Canucks and the Flyers banners, but that's done now. Like they're gone. They're gone.
Oh.
So you're welcome. I'm a man of the people.
It's all Habs all the way. And I do like it. But yes, as Ian said, we might be tweaking some things. We'll change some things or introduce new things as time goes on. But we always invite you to share topics with us that you want us to discuss, whether you want us to bring in a new segment. We love your segment ideas. We're going to revisit some of the ones that you sent in the past and look over them, like as we have planning meetings over the course of the summer. In the meantime, do not forget to follow Ian on social media. Maybe it's Ian is the handle, and obviously be following us, LO_Canadiens. As you know, this podcast is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day. And a lot of our counterparts have been able to secure chats with prospects for their NHL team. Check out Locked On Blue Jackets, for example, or Locked On Sharks. And there's tons of good stuff all over the network. In the meantime, do not forget to send mailbag questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, LO_Canadiens. You can leave them in the YouTube comments as well. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you tell your friends. And we thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next time.